Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our debate tonight, to spay or not to spay. That is the question tonight. And we are so excited to have you joining us. I know that we will have a few more folks as we get started here. And so I'd like to just do a little bit quick housekeeping for everybody. At the lower portion of your screen, there are some icons available to you. And I would like to ask that you utilize the Q&A button to submit any questions that you may have throughout the debate in writing here. You can also utilize the chat feature for any types of questions that you may have as well throughout the debate. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the debate to address those questions that you have submitted. So I do thank you in advance for that. My name is Lori Johnston, and I'm with Allied Exchange, and I will be the moderator for tonight's debate on to spay or not to spay. And our panelist with us tonight is Felisha Hennessey of Friskie Frenchies and Carrie Hyde of the Spaw. Welcome to both of you. While we go through some introductions, I am going to launch a poll, to all of you. And if you can take a minute and go through our poll and answer the 4 small questions while we do the introductions, that will be fantastic. So Felisha, I would like you to introduce yourself and your position with our debate. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Felisha Hennessey, and I am a local breeder for Frenchies. As somebody who breeds, my position on spaying or neutering is that it should be done, because unless you're breeding for conformation or for personality to better that breed, there's really not a reason to spay or neuter. So to not spay or neuter. So I'm just going to be advocating on behalf of, our puppy friends everywhere on why we should spay or neuter them.
Okay.
Thank you,
I guess
Felisha. And Carrie.
Hi, everyone. My name's Carrie Hyde, and I am going to be taking the position for not to be spaying and neutering, which seems crazy given my history and my background as a veterinary technician. And I currently own a doggy daycare and boarding facility and grooming and nutrition center. So I see quite a few animals, and I'm a huge animal lover, just as Felisha is. So I think it's important that we have this debate tonight, and I'm very excited to dive into it and spend the next few minutes or half hour, 45 minutes with all of you, helping us have a better understanding of what would be the best thing for our individual animals and our animals as a whole. So I'm very excited to be here and really excited to hear some of the arguments that Felisha has.
All right, thank you and welcome to you both. So we are going to start off this debate with the opposition, for the spaying and neutering as a pro-choice for our pets with Felisha Hennessey. You have 5 minutes, Felisha.
Okay, so as I said, I breed Frenchies, which means they are not spayed or neutered, right? But there's a specific reason that we breed. We breed for conformation. We breed for personality traits to better that breed. We don't take all dogs and breed them, even puppies from our litters. Some of them are not. I'm going to choose my words wisely here. We don't recommend that they be bred, so we will put it into our contracts that they cannot breed and they must spay neuter. We will limit their AKC registration and things like that to prevent that from happening, because part of that is that we want to limit the unplanned litters that are happening, right? So a pro to spaying and neutering your pet in any scenario is that you are going to limit the amount of unplanned litters that there are. And those unplanned litters greatly contribute to, you know, the homeless pet crisis and all of the mass amounts of animals that are in our shelters right now because of all of those unplanned litters. So when your dog comes into heat or is excited that another female on the street maybe is in heat, that want to roam is increased, and they can get out of your yard. They're resourceful little things. They can get out of your yard no matter how much you try and protect them and keep them inside. It can happen because that animal instinct to go breed is there. And then when they are out of your backyard, then they are no longer safe. Then they can potentially be hit by a car, God forbid, be picked up by somebody who isn't going to go through the right channels to get that animal back home to you, end up in the shelter, all of these things. And was that my time? No? Okay, sorry, I heard something. All of these things can be avoided if we just simply spay or neuter them. And it's a multiple pronged issue, right? So there's the homeless pet crisis, there's the roaming issue, and it reduces their health risks by a lot. Pyometra is a really severe infection, and spaying and neutering eliminates the risk of your female catching that. It reduces mammary tumors. It reduces testicular cancer and prostate issues in males. So the health risks associated with not spaying or neutering provide a lot of reason to do so. Behavior issues, right? Aggression in dogs, even things like mounting or marking their territory. Those things are greatly reduced when you spay and neuter your pet. So even the marking their territory, I think it was like 60% reduction in the marking of the territory by just simply spaying and neutering your pet. So that's just a troublesome thing. And if we can eliminate it, it also takes care of all of these other issues that stem from not spaying and neutering. So I am very much in favor of spaying and neutering our furry friends.
Great point, Felicia. Carrie?
Okay, those are great points, Felicia. Absolutely stuff that we hear quite a bit in this industry. We hear those kind of things. So I'm very excited to be addressing some of these. So first, I want to point out, Felicia talks about how breeding for certain purposes is important. And I agree with Felicia there, because I think that if we're going to be breeding, we should be doing responsible breeding, and then we get more responsible pets. That I absolutely am in favor of. I just think that our breeders should be maybe getting certificates and doing better at breeding for those purposes. So that I just want to make clear as far as my stance. I don't want to take away and encourage people to be breeding dogs. So I'm for responsible breeding. I'm not for irresponsible breeding. So when I say not to spay and neuter, that doesn't mean that I think that everybody should be out breeding their dogs. Let's talk about the unplanned litters that we would be, if we suddenly were to spay and neuter everybody, then we would have unplanned litters. We wouldn't have those anymore. I don't think that there's really that much research that's shown that would actually happen. So you can't really just say that you're going to spay and neuter everybody and then everybody's just going to go get spayed and neutered. If that were the case, then that would be happening. It also kind of leaves us open to the interpretation that everybody's an irresponsible pet owner. And so it kind of leaves us thinking that we have a whole bunch of US citizens, and we're mostly talking about the United States here because that's where we're doing spaying and neutering. But not everybody is an irresponsible pet owner letting their dogs go into the neighbor's yard and roam around and impregnate everybody. I personally have animals that are not spayed or neutered and need to, be housed. So I want to make it clear that the people that I'm talking to are responsible pet owners, and anybody that's in here who is not a responsible pet owner, I don't think this debate is necessarily for that person. So I need to eliminate who I'm speaking to when I say not to spay and neuter. It is not irresponsible pet owners. If you are one of those, as Dr. Karen Becker likes to say, this is not for you. This isn't who I'm talking about. So we can get that. So let's talk about the roaming, for example. So we talk about roaming. The pets don't just roam because they're not spayed or neutered. So, and they don't not roam because they're spayed or neutered. Pets roam for an enormous amount of reasons. So for us to assume that if I spay and neuter, my dog will never want to roam is a fallacy. Dogs roam all over the place. I just found a dog the other day that was spayed, and she was almost got hit by a car, literally almost got hit by a car, and she was spayed. So spaying is not going to prevent our dogs from roaming. It's not going to prevent our homelessness. That's just an assumption, possibly that could happen, but I don't believe that we should be spaying and neutering our animals on the belief that they will no longer roam. And that leads me to the arguments that Felisha brings up, which is the health issues, which is really why I'm here today, is to really talk about the health issues. Felisha brings up a really, really good argument about pyometra. So pyometra is a inflammation of the uterus. And so it can happen when pets are not spayed, female pets, when they're not spayed and they go into heat, their uterus opens up, their cervix opens up, and it can allow bacteria to get into the cervix. And then they can get something called pyometra, which is basically just pus of the uterus. So this happens, and it's deadly, and it can kill your animal, absolutely, for sure, without a doubt. But it happens in older pets. And so it's not, and it doesn't always happen. It's not a guarantee that it can happen. It is definitely a risk that if you aren't going to spay your female dog, you need to be aware of the risks. You need to know what to look for, what could possibly be the problem. I'm going to go kind of quick because we are on a time limit. So Felisha talks about mammary tumors, for example. So there's actually a lot of research that says that mammary cancer, mammary tumors happens both in spayed and neutered dog, spayed and unspayed females. And it doesn't happen in females over the age of 2. So, or under the age of 2. So if your dog is at risk for mammary cancer, it's going to be at the unspayed under the age of 2 years old. We don't see it. So there really wouldn't be a reason not to spay your pets later on in life, which is what I'm going to be talking about, if mammary cancer isn't even something we're worried about, and it only happens on dogs much later in life. Mammary cancer is also something that is fairly treatable compared to the cancers I'm going to be bringing up. So Felisha brings up one of the questions. One of the arguments Felisha brings up is testicular and prostate cancer. There's actually research on prostate cancer being higher in neuter dogs, which is a really interesting kind of topic to talk about. And we'll be giving all of these studies later on. So behavior issues. It's interesting. Felisha brings up behavior issues like humping and mounting and spraying and doing all of that kind of stuff. I can tell you, I own a doggy daycare, and I see dogs that are neutered all the time, lifting and spraying and mounting dogs. That is not going to solve the problem. And worse than it not solving the problem is a guarantee. You're not wanting to neuter, or you want to neuter your animal for a behavior issue that could lead to a medical issue. To me, you're comparing things that you shouldn't be comparing. And if you're more worried about your pet's health than you are about your pet mounting or spraying, I think that maybe pet ownership might not be something that you should be looking towards. I hate to say it like that, but our health of our animals should be the absolute #1 concern. So
a real quick time check. We're at 1 minute.
Okay, so with 1 minute left, I'm going to mention some of the cancers that I think are more important for us to be looking at, that we have seen in studies, not just at the lower level, but at some of the university levels. Hemangiosarcoma, for example, which is a blood vessel cancer, which has a cancer life expectancy rate of 6 to 10 months. And that is increased in pets that are spayed and neutered. So osteosarcoma, bone cancer, another extremely deadly cancer that is increased when we're spaying and neutering our animals. So these are cancers. So when you look at the cancers like mammary cancer versus osteosarcoma, you really can't weigh them out. You can, but you have to look at the long list. So those are just 2 cancers that are increased when you spay and neuter your animal. Let's look at the hormonal issues. hormonal, like hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism is increased in our animals. And the reason why is because we're taking away hormones from them when we spay and neuter an animal. And then we expect the body to just kind of sit back and do nothing and act like it should be, nothing had happened. So hypothyroidism to some people may seem like a no big deal, but the number one reason dogs go to the vet right now and spend tons of money is ear infections, which are linked to hypothyroidism. So it is important. It is costly.
Great point, Carrie. Thank you. But your time has come. And so we are going to pass this on back to Felisha to respond to the discussion here. Felisha, you will now have 7 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So those are really scary sounding until you kind of break it down and look at it a little bit. Okay, so one of the points I brought up was that breeders breed for conformation. We breed for personality traits. We breed to bring out the best in the litters, right? So we're not taking aggressive dogs and breeding that back into what would be a healthy and lovely line. In a sense, some cancers are thought to have a genetic factor there. So when you spay and neuter those animals that should not be reproducing, we're contributing to an overall healthier population of animals because we know that the dogs we're breeding are healthy. You go through significant testing on mom and dad's side to make sure that there are no health issues. So spaying and neutering dogs that aren't going to be bred for specific purposes makes a lot of sense, especially when you bring up cancers, because a healthy line can really greatly reduce that. You did bring up a point of spaying and neutering just later in life because of the mammary science is saying that, you know, it's only occurring in animals who are older than 2 years old. Well, there's a pro and a con to everything. So the risk of spaying or neutering your pet later in life is just the general risks of anesthesia increase as they're older. So that's something to consider, right? There's always the flip side. And the roaming, you're right. Animals get out and they roam for all sorts of reasons. And spaying and neutering isn't going to solve that, but it is going to help reduce that. And that's kind of our goal. We want to do all that we can to reduce the issues. And it's not going to solve, you know, the mounting and marking the territory, but it's going to reduce it, which is something that we're aiming for. And no matter how we slice it, we just are always going to have some irresponsible pet owners. So when breeders do things like putting into our contracts that you cannot breed this animal and we limit the registration and things like that, that's us kind of taking our responsibility and doing our part to limit those unwanted, unplanned litters. And I think I've responded to all of your points. I was taking notes as you were going. The hypothyroidism, that was something that I wanted to touch on. If we keep our pets really healthy, then those things don't happen. So some of these things can be, you know, better addressed with a diet rather than avoiding a spay or neuter that is really going to help solve all of these other major issues.
Great point, Felisha. And I will now turn this back over to Carrie. You have an opportunity to respond to Felisha, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay, so Felisha brings up genetics and how if we're having animals that are you know, if we're getting pregnant animals and it's done without somebody knowing what they're doing, then we end up passing down these genetics. And obviously, yes, genetics plays a role in any sort of thing. In fact, we know that you can even run tests now to find out if you have genes for Alzheimer's and all sorts of things. So, but again, I want to go back to the fact that I wasn't addressing or recommending that people who are not knowing what they're doing are are breeding their pets. I'm not suggesting that we let everybody breed their pets. In fact, I want to do a whole nother debate on why breeders should have these certificates so that they can learn that. I'm pro breeder, believe it or not, Felicia. I actually think people should be breeding. I just think they should be more educated. And I'm not a fan of backyard breeders, which are just breeding to make money and not to further the health of their animals. So I am in support of that for sure. Absolutely. Felisha brings up a really good point, which a lot of my clients are concerned about, and it's definitely something to talk about, is if, I had mentioned that we could even spay a little bit later in life would even help greatly reduce some of the health risks that your pet may be facing during their life. And Felisha brings up a good point about anesthesia, but I would say to you that anesthesia, we know so much more about anesthesia now than we ever did. And when I'm talking about spaying a little later in life, I'm not talking about taking your 16-year-old dog who already has a bunch of, medical problems and then deciding to spay. Frankly, if your dog gets to 16 without being spayed, I don't think you need to do that. But I think that anesthesia is really, really safe as opposed to how it used to be. I also think that if you are taking a pet who's a little bit older in life, you really want to do your research on the veterinarian that you're using. You don't want to be just using somebody straight out of vet school. You want to make sure that they know anesthesia, and you can greatly reduce those risks. That is, going in and having your pet spayed under a really good condition to help reduce the amount of cancers that your pet would be having, I think is definitely a chance that I would be taking and not worried about it so much. Felisha talks about the roaming. Again, we go back to the roaming, and she does say, obviously she concedes to the fact that we're not going to stop all the roaming, but keep in mind there are things we can do to prevent our pets from roaming that don't require us spaying and neutering. We can be building bigger fences. There are things, trainers can help you. You don't have to just say, I'm going to neuter my dog so he doesn't roam. There's really are things that you can do there. So I don't think, but let's talk about hypothyroidism. She talks about with the diet. So we're talking to somebody who's spent the last part of her life learning about nutrition, and I'm a certified pet nutritionist. So diet is, I wish I could always go back to diet. I really wish I could blame everything on your diet and that's the answer to everything. Unfortunately, it's not. Unfortunately, sometimes with our hormones, sure, we can regulate hormones certain ways, but once the damage is done, once we've completely, and that's probably one of the biggest problems with spaying and neutering, especially pediatric spaying and neutering, is that we can't take it back. You cannot fix it through diet. A lot of these things cannot be fixed through diet. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to disagree with that completely. But I do want to address a little bit, since I have a little bit of time, about the numbers of pets that are dying in our pounds and in our shelters. I'm old, so I call it the pound, but now they're called shelters. Personally, I like the word pound better because it helps spark some anger in me. I do a lot of rescue for animal shelters, and so I'm a huge supporter in doing different kinds of spays and neuters, which a lot of vets aren't even aware of. They're not taught in the United States to do that. But we can actually do an ovarian saving spay, and we can do sterilization to our males. I don't think a responsible pet owner with a male dog should ever neuter their dog, so long as they are very responsible. They're not going to have them off leash. They're not going to let them out of the yard, those kind of things. But with our females, I think because of the risk of pyometra that Felisha brings up, I think that it is really important to look into different types of spaying, and an ovarian saving spay would actually help your pet still be able to produce the hormones that they need to live a healthier life without them being able to get pregnant. And I think that is important because we do have a lot of animals, but I do want to bring up the pounds, the shelters.
Real quick, we have a time check. You have 30 seconds left, Carrie.
A lot of the dogs that are brought into the pound and the shelters are brought in there because they have so many health problems, cancers that people can't afford anymore. And so if we can have these animals not be spending so much money at the veterinarian hospitals with hypothyroidism, with Cushing's disease is another immune system problem that we have, the osteosarcoma. I mean, my own dad's dog got dropped off. So, we need to stop that.
Thank you, Carrie. Great points that you have brought up. It is now time for our final rebuttal. Felicia, you have 4 minutes for your rebuttal. Go ahead.
Okay, so again, wonderful points. And I think everyone is going to take away a lot of, thought-provoking information from tonight. So I'm really excited that we had the chance to do this. I think, the personal responsibility, like you mentioned, of building a bigger fence is just not really something that most people are going to do. The spay neuter cost is about $400. A new fence cost is about $4,000. So I think when people, you said it yourself, they drop off their pets at the shelter when the bills just get to be too high. I think people are always going to want to choose the path of least resistance. And in this case, it's not the fence. I think most people would prefer the spay neuter that's also going to, address those other more serious issues. Again, the hypothyroidism that you touched on, I think spaying and neutering is still going to better solve the major issues that we brought up over, the potential hypothyroidism that I think, and cancers and stuff that I think can be addressed by better lineage in the breeding and fewer unplanned litters and better, healthier diets in our pets overall. I think a spay neuter is definitely still the more responsible way to go here. And I think I hit on everything you hit on.
Thank you, Felicia.
I've got
Carrie,
a mess of notes happening.
Okay.
your rebuttal,
So-
final rebuttal, 5 minutes.
Okay.
Or
I
I'm sorry,
think that-
excuse me, 4 minutes.
4 minutes. So I think that's really what this comes down to is, are you willing to be a responsible pet owner and or an unresponsible pet owner? And what does it mean to be a responsible pet owner? First and foremost, for me, my responsibility is to the animal that I took into my home. I took this animal into my home and promised to love it, feed it, take care of it, and do all of the research that I can do to protect this particular animal. And in my opinion, not doing your research and making sure that you are that responsible pet owner is doing a disservice to that animal as well as our society. So I think that, to just spay and neuter because it's more convenient. Felicia's right. Unfortunately, a lot of people are going to go for that easier option. And I don't think those people are who I'm talking to. I want to talk to the people who, want to be responsible for their pets and understand. And I also want to talk to those people that don't really understand what responsible pet ownership is. The first and foremost thing you're responsible for is that pet's health. That's number one. Whether he's mounting or doing whatever he's doing in the house it should be secondary to your concerns of his health, because we do have our pounds getting inundated with sick animals because they're not being responsibly bred. I do support responsible breeding. I don't want people out there just breeding dogs without having this. So I don't want to get backed into that corner that's what I'm saying. I'm definitely saying if you're going to be irresponsible, you need to spay and neuter. But I want to talk to those people right now who have on their lap that cute little tiny puppy that's not spayed or neutered yet. I want you to realize that those choices that you make right now could lead you down a path of spending an enormous amount of money and the heartache from them dying. And then that guilt is going to be on you. So bottom line, I always say this, at the end of your pet's life and during your pet's life, it's only you that is sitting in that veterinarian hospital. You make the decisions 100%. I hope I've brought to you some stuff to think about and to understand, we talked about hypothyroidism. I'm telling you, the number one reason I see dogs and that they go to the vet is for itchy ears, scratching, all of these kind of things. And we need to be more responsible as pet owners. And we need to stop just listening to what Bob Barker told us. I always say that Bob Barker told us to spay and neuter, but I wonder what he would say now. Knowing what we know now, I think Bob Barker would change his mind. That's what I think.
Thank you, Carrie. Great points. Thank you, both of you. very good points posed by each of you in these arguments. We do have a few questions that I would like us to take the opportunity to address from our attendees. And the first one that we have, there are 5 of them. So the first one that we have is, my dog is a cockapoo. This is from Nilsa. She's 18 months old. I need to decide soon to do a spay or not. And what is the deciding factor?
So I don't know if Felicia wants to answer that, or I can answer it.
I think each of you can give your thoughts. 1
Okay,
minute.
so what I think, Nilsa, is that first, you don't have to decide soon. The decision can come up to you whenever you want it to come up, depending on what you're looking for. So I tell people, if you're very, very, very worried about it, then do an ovarian saving spay. If I don't want to put anybody in a situation where they're stressed, because then that puts stress on their animal, but you do have options. My dog wears diapers. She has her little pull-ups, and I don't find it very inconvenient at all. But again, pyometra is something that a little bit later in her life, usually around the age of 5, can happen younger. We might see something like pyometra. So I think that you don't have to make a decision really quick. Take that off of you and just make the right decision for you. And don't be so worried about when you make that decision.
Felicia, would you like to give your thoughts on that question from Nilsa?
I would just say that if you're at all concerned about it, I think an ovarian saving spay is a really great option, because you still are, doing that spay. Your dog isn't going to have an unplanned litter, but you're leaving a lot of hormone saving things intact. I think if you're worried about it, that's a wonderful, wonderful option.
Thank you both. Our next question comes again from Nilsa. Roaming is a concern with Oz. Is it diminished with this procedure?
You mean for your female dog?
Roaming is a concern.
With the ovarian saving spay.
Yeah, OSS. Sorry.
Oh, so
I apologize.
My experience has been mostly that the male tends to be more of the roamer than the female anyway. So I don't necessarily, I mean, it could happen, but usually it's the male that can smell the dog being in heat and wants to go find the female. I think roaming with females is less common, but certainly, if she's 18 months. So I personally would at least wait till she's 2 years old before I did anything at all to her. But if you think she's going to be roaming, then yeah, you need to start taking some very big precautions to make sure that she's not going to be getting out of the house and running down the street, and check your fences. And now females, it's when they are in heat that you would have to worry about it. Other than that, and you'll know when she goes into heat because her little vulva is going to swell a little bit. So, just start paying attention to her heat and know when that's happening so that you can enclose her a little bit more.
Thank you.
Felicia,
do you have any comments?
Have a good answer for that.
Lots of nods. I agree. In our experience, right, we have males and females, and in our experience, the females will even turn down males even if they are in heat. So you don't have to worry so much about your girl getting out. It'd be more possibly her attracting males to your yard. So you would need to protect your yard, make sure no one's getting in.
Okay. We are going to move on to the next question, which comes to us from Angela Danchuk. I have a purebred golden retriever that I had wanted to train to be a service dog therapy dog. Unfortunately, the breeder made a very bad match for he and I. I have been raising him as clean, natural as possible, and had intended to only have the vasectomy done on him. However, my dog is extremely strong, stubborn, not suited for service. He has breeding in his line. That being said, I am disabled and my dog has often pulled me over or out of my chair. I am at a point where I am thinking of rehoming, but a home would need to be raw feeding and raising clean, minimal vaccination. My last resort before I seriously consider rehoming is to neuter him to see if it does settle him down in any way. Realize there is no guarantee, but my last resort. Can you comment?
Okay, so
That was a
how old
lot of
is he?
background there.
That's okay, I got it. How old
Okay.
is he?
It does not say. I
Okay,
can,
that's okay. So here's what I will tell you. Like you even know, there is no guarantee. I'm so sorry that you didn't get matched up with the right. I'm a golden retriever lover and I have had golden retrievers my whole life. I will tell you this, golden retrievers, spayed, not spayed, neutered, not neutered. When you have an animal with that much energy, it's very unlikely that you're going to get them to calm down. I have had Goldens my entire life, and they're high energy dogs, some of them. So I would say that if your only reason to neuter your male is to see if he settles down, knowing what I know about the health risks, I personally would not do it. I know that's a hard thing to say, and it breaks my heart to say that, to think of rehoming, because I think that also could be stressful on an animal to be rehomed. But I think if you're going to neuter him only to find out he has to be rehomed anyway, I think a better route would be maybe to get a trainer in there, maybe that could do a little bit more work with you to see if you can work something out.
And for me, on the breeding side, unfortunately, we just have no way of knowing. We only have the puppies with us for, that first 8 weeks, and their personalities develop a lot after that too, right? And their environment, all of those factors. So we just can never predict fully what an animal is going to be like. I will say, before you rehome, definitely reach out to your breeder, because I can guarantee you they will want that puppy back, and they will be able to put it in a home that they know he's not going to need to be rehomed from again. And again, like Carrie said, I think a training would be a really great option there as well.
yes. And I'd like to chime in and reiterate the training, because I had Goldens as well, and they are a lot of high energy, but with the proper training, I believe that you may be happy. So, all right. Thank you. Our next question comes from Genevieva Vega. What about males with retained testicles?
Ooh, that is a really, really great question. And I got to tell you, Jeannie, that is definitely something we have to worry about. I think that's when I talk about there, I never want to generalize anything. If you have a pet who has his testicles that have not dropped, we need to go in and do some work. You definitely need to go in and probably have that dog neutered. There's some medical conditions that can happen with that. Those are things that I'm so glad that Jeannie brought that up, because we put time limits on this, because otherwise, I swear to you, this debate could go for 10 years. Felisha and I and Lori and everybody, we could go forever. So we had to put a time limit on it. But it helps reiterate the fact that you have to look at your specific pet, and you need to get, I think, 2 or 3 opinions before you do something. But I think absolutely, I think you should speak with I'm a big supporter of more holistic veterinarians. But if you have what Jeannie's talking about is when their testicles actually never drop. And sometimes one will drop and the other won't drop, and they kind of get stuck up there, so to speak. That's a whole different case. And I think, yeah, absolutely. If you have a dog that has had that happen, you're going to need to have your vet go in and probably neuter your dog.
And I would say that is out of my realm. I am not a vet, and definitely chat with your vet on that one.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Our next question comes from Jackie Dorr. I have adopted 2 dogs 10 years apart with FOCHP, and neutering is a part of the adoption process. Your thoughts?
Oh, that's a big one. I just had a client the other day who he didn't adopt, but he purchased from a breeder, and she put a contract on him that said that that sounds like she put a contract and not out on him. She had him sign a contract that if he didn't spay or neuter his dog by the age of 6 months, then he would have to pay her $10,000. So that is a really, really hard thing to do. I suggested to him, and I'm going to suggest to you, Jackie, speak with the person involved, give them the research that you have. I will be providing some actual studies for you to read later, some links that you can go to some of the stuff, the research that I had. I would present these to them and tell them your concerns. Find out, that's where you're going to find yourself in those ovarian saving spays and those the sterilization instead of the full, it's called a gonadectomy, when they actually take the testicles completely away. So where you can do more sterilization and ovarian saving spay, that's going to be, if you can't get them to look at the health concerns that you have and agree that you're going to promise to be a very responsible pet parent, your pet's never going to be off leash, you won't let them out of the house. If you can't get them to agree to that, then your middle ground would be the ovarian saving spays and the more of the vasectomies than the complete gonadectomies and hysterectomies.
Felicia, any comments? Otherwise, we have another question in the chat.
I would just say reach out to, obviously it's done, right? You adopted and spayed, neutered, and it's done. But to anybody going forward in that situation, always have a conversation with your breeder or whoever you're adopting from, because we're people. Everybody's people on the other end, and everybody just wants those animals in a really wonderful home. And if we have to compromise a little bit on things and both parties feel comfortable with it, then it's not an issue. But you got to keep those lines of communication open.
All right,
Agreed.
thank you. So Elizabeth Newton had posed the question, would this information and concerns apply to cats as well?
Wow, thank you, Elizabeth. We do that. Why do we do that? I'm going to tell you why we do that in the pet world. Why do we always say dogs, 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 dogs? And I'm guilty of it, but I'm going to tell you why. It's because the research is less on the cat side. Unfortunately, our kittens and our cats are completely being forgotten about. And so when we do a lot of the research that Felisha and I are doing, the research that we want to bring to you is from the dog side. So we end up not communicating now, or not talking about it as much. Now, I will tell you that there has been some research on cats, and they are less likely to have some of these problems that we see in the dogs when they're spayed and neutered. They're less likely to have them. Why? I don't know, because there's not enough studies to tell us why that is. For me personally, I always go back to the fact that nature has provided us what nature has provided us. And so I find it hard to believe that we could do a full hysterectomy on a kitten or a full neuter on a kitten and not have side effects. I just think that the research isn't available there, unfortunately. And we need to come up with a lot of money to support our kitties.
Any comments, Felicia?
Kittens, cats, they are not my realm. So I'll leave that one to Carrie. She obviously knew more about it, and that the research just isn't there. I haven't even looked.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
So we have about 1 minute left of our originally planned time. And if you'd like to say a few words, Carrie, I know that you did want to spend a few minutes. If I could just share really quick our poll with the group. Everybody should see it on the screen right now, our attendees. So it looks like question 1 was overwhelmingly, do you believe all animals should be spayed and neutered? And 50% said depends. Are there situations where you shouldn't spay and neuter a pet? And overwhelmingly 83% said yes. At what age should you spay neuter? Overwhelming was 24 months. And our final question was, has your veterinarian ever discussed alternative methods for spaying and neutering your pet? and 100% of our attendees said no.
Oh,
Thank you
my
so
goodness.
much for participating in our poll. Appreciate it. And Carrie, go ahead.
So that last question is really, so as you guys know, I own the spa and I sponsored this debate, and I wanted to thank Felicia and Lori for coming on and helping me do this. It is so important to me because our veterinarians aren't speaking to us, and that is perfect, absolute 100%. Not one person in here, veterinarian, gave them the options. That is why I'm here. That is why I want to do these debates. That's why I think it's important to listen to both sides to understand before we make our decisions, because our veterinarians are only giving us one side of the story. And that's not just with spaying, neutering. It's with vaccinations. It's with diet. It's with flea and tick medications, heartworm medications, surgeries, all of this stuff we are not being told by our veterinarians. And so I cannot thank you guys all for being here, for Felisha coming on and giving her knowledge as a breeder. It's important for all of us to speak out. I thank you guys all for being here. I'm excited about doing these in the future and having more debates. And if there's any topics that you think we should talk about, please put them on our website, put them out, call me, whatever you need to do. I plan on, if you want to be involved in a debate, if you want to, Lori is from a company called Allied Exchange. She does fabulous at helping us moderate these, put them together. If you're not a techie person like I am, you can reach out to Lori. She can help put these together for you. If you want to challenge your friend, I know we're all on Facebook now, and every single minute of every single day we're being debated, but then maybe you want to tell them, hey, let's do a friendly moderated debate on a subject. Reach out to us, because there's all sorts of debates we can do, and ultimately it helps our pets. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope you learned a lot from Felisha and myself, and I hope to see you guys here for our next debate. We haven't decided what it's going to be yet, but to be honest with you, I started thinking about doing rice or no rice.
And
That
as Carrie had suggested, feel free to put suggestions out online at the Spaw Facebook page or Millie's House, our group. You can always send emails and post comments on the website, which is thespaw.com. So thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.